Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Surbhi. I practice as a relationship and a career coach. And today we're talking about leadership and especially women in leadership. Today, we will keep our interactions flowing. We'll make sure that we all take away something from this workshop. And in order to do so, I do invite all of us to use the chat box as much as you want to talk, unmute yourself and talk so that we can actually make the workshop feel meaningful to all of us. Okay. Okay, let's dive into what all are we doing today. We're starting with communication and how does communication become a building block for us when we're trying to attain leadership positions or be in leadership positions? What kind of communication, what kind of leadership styles can we sort of hold for us and make space for in our lives? What is emotional intelligence and why is it important for any leader to have emotional intelligence? And how can you use negotiation as your superpower as you attain or go into your corporate or your career journey? Okay, let's start with a little bit of understanding of who we are, how we are, and how are we feeling in general about our career trajectories. Um, you have a prompt on your screen. You can use the chat box. You can also unmute yourself and talk. If an employee walks up to you requesting you for a leave on an important day, what would you do? I would wait for responses in the chat box. And if you guys want to unmute yourself and talk, please do that. Think about it. When we are in a situation like this, what do we usually do? Anushka, you've raised your hand. Please feel free to unmute yourself and talk.
So I would first try and understand why is leave being asked for? Is it an emergency? Understand where that other person is coming from, and accordingly take a call. So of course, if it's a family emergency or a medical reason, then sure. But also convey at the same point of time that it's a crucial point of time and it's a crucial day. So I mean, definitely express how slightly or whatever disappointed I am.
Hmm. Okay. So Anushka, Komal, and Deepika has had similar answers, which is basically having an empathetic approach to the person who's asking for a leave without outrightly saying a yes or a no. Taking an empathetic approach, being a good listener in certain situations might help you better. Okay, amazing. Let's do one more. If your team is crumbling down due to differences and lack of coordination, what would you do? We've all acknowledged that teams are made by the people and the relationships that they hold. How do they hold compassion towards each other? When you see that your team is facing a lot of differences within each other and there is a lack of coordination, what do you do? Make them play team
Basically,
building games. Okay, Tanya, you're saying something?
so I
Okay.
think I probably would get into the bottom of it, try and understand why the difference is
Mm-hmm.
and why the lack of coordination is coming from.
Yeah.
Would basically try and talk to them, each one of them. Uh, First, understand the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my first step.
Okay. So Sakshi, Rupa, your answers talk about how can I get to the bottom of the issue? What can I understand? Same said Anushka, how can you understand the root cause? How can you understand? And again, take a very empathetic approach towards where does the problem lie and how can I resolve it? I also see a response from Komal. Komal, that's also a great way, but sometimes it hinders the aspect of actually understanding the problem. Might help in the short term, but for the long term understanding and truly getting to the root of the issue might work better. But yes, playing team building games can actually bring people together so that they can start having conversations or break hesitation if it is an early level thing that you are sort of noticing. Now let's talk about some of the women who are actually acing leadership. Falguni Nair, anyone knows about her? I'm sure a lot of us would know about her. She is currently the CEO of Nykaa. She started it in 2012, and Nykaa, we know how it is working. I just want to give top level examples of how women in leadership are working and what can we sort of take from their examples. But let's get to the meat of our conversation today. How many of us feel like they have developed communication skills after a period of time? And when I say communication skills, there's always going to be a scope of growth. But when it comes to understanding how do I put forth something or starting with a place of imposter, how many of us have gone through that journey of starting with imposter and now being more assertive in our communication? Okay, I see one raised hand. I see I see more raised hands. Yes, a lot of us had to go through this whole spectrum of when we just walked into our workplaces. It was more common to feel the sense of imposter. It was more common to be nice. It was more common to be always accommodating, not having very clear boundaries, to moving to communication styles that are assertive. Now, what are the barriers that may cause our communication to break down? So, firstly, emotional barriers. When you're having a bad day or when you feel frustrated, there's also a lack of headspace to listen. So now, when we've developed some kind of more assertive communication, more assertive conversation styles for us, but still, when something more emotional is happening on any other aspect of our lives, maybe I did not wake up on the right side of the bed. Or maybe I am not feeling the best. I'm feeling drained or tired or didn't have the best workout in the morning or breakfast didn't work well for me in this morning. I might have some sort of pent up emotions at work also. Now, this is something that is absolutely normal to hold. But what we can do in certain situations is take a step back and truly understand if the frustration that I'm feeling is because my body needs something else, or my body is craving for something else, or is it coming from a place of absolutely what the other person is doing. Now, usage of jargons. When we use too many jargons, sometimes our communication might not go through. I give this example a lot where I say that if you start to speak in a language that people do not understand, no matter how well you're conveying, it's going to be very, very hard for them to understand. So when we are talking about communication, let's think about what can I do to make sure that my communication is received as well as
मम्मी भी आ गई है
conveyed. Sorry, is someone speaking something? Okay, that means not. Okay, then let's talk about lack of confidence. Now, I just asked all of us how many of us have gone through the journey of feeling imposter to being assertive with your communication. Whoever is still in the middle of it, whoever is still in the middle of that journey where confidence is not still something that you naturally feel, know that you're on the right track, and this is a developing stage where you are moving towards being more confident, being more sure about yourself, which starts showing in your sense of communicating also. Now, how can you develop communication as a skill? First of all, active listening. I heard responses from everyone, and I was so happy on hearing the responses that we all understand the value of being an active listener. But let me just also do a quick check. How many of us, when someone is talking, is in your mind thinking about how am I going to respond to them? So, minute Surbhi starts talking, my brain goes directly into how am I going to respond to her? When we're always thinking about what is going to be my next response, how am I going to handle this situation, what am I going to say, we're barely actively listening. We're only listening to respond. But in cases of active listening, we need to understand that right now I am just listening. I can always take a break before responding. I do not have to prepare in my mind what my response is going to be. Now, in some situations, you might feel I know how this conversation is going to go through, and therefore I already know how my response is going to look like. Timely feedback. How we generally, as people who are in corporates, we tend to forget the meaning of feedback a lot more than not. When we're giving feedback, are we also considerate of all things good that I want to say? Or am I only approaching someone for feedback when something, I have to tell them something or give them a feedback on improving an aspect? Now, even when we do so, our language might look like, okay, so these are all the things that are happening amazingly, but this is what needs to be improved upon. But feedback does not need to essentially have a negative or a positive component to it. It can be given on a more regular basis. So, some teams, and we've observed this, that teams that have more regularized mechanisms, which can be on Friday, I will sit with my team and talk about all of the things that worked well, all of the things that didn't work well. Timely, I will keep giving it rather than waiting for that one day when I actually have to give feedback to everyone. So Fridays open circles where we all sit, we all give and take feedback from everyone. Transparent culture, multiple conversations around how do you set expectations before the outcome actually comes in. Now, as leaders, as people working with other people, a good thing to do is also being able to say or clearly set my expectations with other people. So if I need if I need something in a certain format, instead of expecting them to know, can I also make sure that I convey it in that way? Yes, when we are working for a long time with someone and they understand our working styles, they start giving us responses in that way. That happens eventually. But especially when we're trying to build teams, can we start with letting them know what we expect rather than expecting them they will know what or how to give outcomes? Setting reasonable expectations, company policies, I think, is more of what an organization can do. But let's try to find out what is my communication style in leadership. Give me 3 words that are used to describe your temperament. Any 3 words that you used to describe your temperament. The chat box is open for you. I am waiting for some responses. Let's see how we do it. Happy, friendly, and patient. Great. Anyone else? Patient. I see a lot of patience. I love it. Okay. Positive. Happy. Charu, I'm still waiting for 2 more of your words. Kind, patient, and assertive, loud, confusing, and quick. Okay. And now, as we know it, let us also think about how does these adjectives that I have written down affect my relationship with others? So I see someone has written kind, patient, and assertive. So Tanya, how do you think these adjectives affect your relationship with others? Charu had written patient, and that helps her uh, get analysis of a situation better, do analysis of a situation better. Great insight, Charu. Kindness, okay. And how does this affect your leadership styles? Have you also observed that I am sometime in difficult situations because I am too kind or I am too positive? And again, this is a safe space. This is a space where we can challenge our thoughts. We can also reflect upon how things have been going for me. Tripti, you raised your hand. Okay, it's because of the imposter syndrome mostly. Tripti, would you like to speak about it, or is it something that you just want to write?
दो चिप छोड़ दियो
Okay. Leader
मैंने
becomes
पूछा था
leader becomes approachable. Team members would not hesitate or hold back. Rupa, great insight. Assertiveness is often misunderstood for bossiness. Sakshi, I do want to have a conversation on that. Would you like to unmute yourself and talk? Okay, now I have some responses, and I think you guys would have had a chance to also reflect upon what are my leadership styles, how am I looking at my leadership styles, what are some of the things that I do that makes me a better or someone that people cannot approach. Keep the context of what we've talked about, what we've reflected upon here, but let's move forward. What do you think? What do you understand by the word emotional intelligence? And there is so much information everywhere on different social media channels that we read about emotional intelligence. But what do you think emotional intelligence truly mean?
I think emotional intelligence is something that often people can tell their emotions without being emotionally charged. Do you mean like if I feel angry or disappointed, like accurately telling what exactly you're feeling without uh, having to have being so emotionally charged in an environment and clearly letting other person know how they feel.
Okay, okay. I could not see who is talking, so I can't refer you by your.
This is Tanya.
Okay, Tanya, great. Great insight there, Tanya. That's actually very, very close to what I was going to speak about. But is there anyone else? I think I saw one raised hand. So if anyone also wants to go, give it a shot, please go ahead. Okay. Anushka, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I think for me personally, emotional intelligence also majorly revolves around being able to listen to my heart in terms of how I feel and how I perceive certain situations, especially when people are getting slightly combative, but also sort of knowing which battles to pick and which ones to not bother with. So yeah, so that's what it essentially is for me.
I think which battles to pick should be everybody's tagline, because I think that is, if I were to give you one thing today, one takeaway today, it is being able to understand which battles to pick at all times. But coming back to emotional intelligence, so emotional intelligence, and I see a lot of great responses in chat as well. But in entirety, emotional intelligence means being able to regulate my emotions. Now, what does regulating my emotions mean? Regulating my emotions primarily talks about when I have something, when I have um, Swati, great answer. Yes, absolutely. When I have an emotional situation, do I let it come to me and I react to that situation in the most emotional way? Or do I take a step back process, and then respond to that situation. Now, reaction versus response in any situation is what tells us how emotionally intelligent we are. So, for example, I had asked someone to give me, and they have missed on a deadline. Now, they have missed on a deadline, and it's absolutely infuriating because I wanted to get ahead of it and I wanted to finish it. I wanted to tick it off my bucket list, submit it, etc. Now, because of this delay, which is no fault of my own, I am in a situation where I will have to delay it. Now, in that situation, how, do I react emotionally?
What
Do
can
I
we do?
react with my emotions? Or am I able to step back, respond, step back, process how I am feeling, and then respond to the situation? So I think emotional intelligence revolves around being able to react versus respond in different situations. Now, this is the understanding that we go in with. But we have always seen this stereotype go around us that, women are too emotional to be effective leaders, etc., etc. But we have also seen that emotional intelligence is the most crucial step to successful leadership. Now, a lot of times we come across all of these outdated stereotypes which hold true still in a lot of workplaces, not in our minds. So, how do we process that and still be able to perform what we're supposed to perform? Effective emotional regulation is a hallmark of good leadership. I cannot emphasize enough on emotional intelligence, on how it affects your relationships at work, on how it affects the whole overall idea of being a good leader. This has to be, and emotional intelligence has no gender. So I will not go into the depths of who needs to be more emotionally intelligent. There is already a lot of conversation around women doing all the extra emotional labor. I believe as a leader, as an individual, as anyone who is at any point in their life needs to develop emotional intelligence as one of the greatest strengths that they can hold. Okay, now we have spoken about emotional intelligence. I also want us to experiment a little bit on how do we react to different situations. Think about this picture. What do you think the child in purple, emotions, facial expressions are telling you about them? She's crying, the other girl is comforting her. Okay. Would you want to emphasize a little bit more on the child in purple and think about her facial expression and tell me if you think that those are coming from a place of comfort? Or what do you think about their expression? Let me not send indicative questions. Okay. 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 Now let's think about this image. And just think, look at the person who is comforting, not the person who is being comforted. Do you think they have an empathetic approach? Okay. Okay. Anushka, would you like to think about it in terms of empathy? Just look at their expression. Do you think they are truly being empathetic?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like expressing care and concern.
Okay. And now let's think about this one.
Hi. I think in this case, the other person was actually is also getting affected by the negative emotion that the person is going through. I think the previous picture is more of a neutral stand. We're trying to see what can be done. But here, I think the person is getting affected also.
Hmm. Okay. Absolutely. So I wanted to show three different aspects of how empathy is shown in different scenarios, how uh, actually how sympathy is shown versus how empathy is shown in different scenarios. So when you're physically present with someone and you start getting affected by emotions, now feeling the sense of emotion, feeling the sense of how emotions look towards to the other person, to yourself, is one thing, but also understanding that this is not my place or this is not for me to feel all of the emotions. For this is primarily for the other person. This is the space that I'm holding for another person rather than making it for myself. I think rule number one, when we talk about empathetic conversations, when we talk about making that space for other person, is understanding that when we're trying to be supportive, when we're trying to hold that space for another person, we have to make sure that this is not about us but about them. This is primarily seen in every conversation when, so while you're having a conversation and you see that the other person suddenly starts to tell an anecdote about them. Now, more often than not, you're okay to take that anecdote, but sometimes that might feel like they're trying to make it all about them without me feeling like I am heard in this situation. Okay. Now let's quickly address the microaggression that we see within workplaces. Microaggression are very, very small and usually not considered spiteful in work environments, but they can affect someone in a bad way. Now, microaggressions can be something as simple as I can't pronounce your name, or I don't really enjoy the food you bring. I mean, your food is very spicy. Whenever we're making a more personal comment, we can maybe take a step back and see if that is necessary or not. At our workplaces, we see a lot of microaggression. We see a lot of biases that always keep coming up. And sometime or the other, we've all been at the receiving end of the biases, of the microaggression that come up. Now it's obvious, it also becomes our responsibility to keep our biases in check, to keep in check if whatever I am saying, to keep in check if whatever or however I am being towards my fellow colleagues, am I also propagating of it, or am I someone who is standing with them against the biases and stereotypes that have always shown up in work styles? Gender biases and stereotypes. Um, Things that are being told, like leadership positions, or being asked in interviews about what are your plans of getting married. Do you think once you're married you will be able to handle responsibilities like you're doing right now? What do you think about having a family, and being rejected from interviews for all of these things? Now, these are all of the things that are rooted in gendered biases and stereotypes. And it again, someone said which battles to pick, but always consider being the leader who does not have a team that needs to pick up battles when it comes to things. Okay. We'd slightly brush upon negotiation and how it becomes your superpower in any particular situation. So when we are in a work environment, when we are negotiating, when we are truly trying to listen to the person who is having a conversation with us, we're also able to understand their viewpoint. Now, I have a great bunch of people here who've already mentioned in a lot of scenarios where I would want to be a better listener, or I would listen to where they were coming from. Negotiating starts from understanding someone's viewpoint, being flexible about what or where my viewpoint needs to be interested, and also knowing about the person I'm negotiating with. Okay, so one thing that I want you all to take away today will be the strength, resilience, and innovation that women bring to leadership roles is unparalleled. And I'm 100% sure that all of you still or already know it. But think about it, that when we're going through all of the stereotypes, when we're thinking about how the world works or how many gendered questions do I have to answer, and sometimes it's so irritating that no matter how hard I've worked, no matter what I've done in my life, it always boils down to my gender without anybody even addressing the kind of value that I bring. Think about it, that
Thank you.
we as women become leaders, we're also more considerate of what and how do we want to work through.